Welcome to Crossroad Connection. We're speaking out for those left unheard. I'm your host for this episode, and my name is Art Van Walde. And I have the wonderful privilege today of sitting here with me, Reuben and Bob. And in a little bit, Reuben's going to be talking to us about some of his artwork. And I would like Reuben and Bob to introduce themselves to us. So Reuben, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I start out, of course, my name is Reuben Kenyatta, and I'm from the Lansing area. And presently, I'm working as an artist, or trying to be one, and using it in multiple roles and so forth. One as therapy and one as a means of support. And what my position is right now is that I'm trying to overcome a lot of different situations, especially from the military. I had experienced a lot of trauma, and so I use art in that sense of the word as for the therapy to help balance out or find a release of my emotions, or try to find a balance in my life to be a little more productive in society. And the reason for me being a little more productive in society is because I was recently released from confinement no less than a little over a year ago.
Okay.
You know? And in doing so, I wanted to try to start out on new terms, on a more positive turn and a more productive turn. And one way is doing that was through art, and also connecting with different programs, with which Bob has the honor of being one of the directors.
Before we get to Bob, I do have a few questions for you. So
Okay.
you said that you served our nation's military. How did you serve our nation's military?
Actually, I was United States Marine. I went in at a very young age.
Okay.
I had the wonderful opportunity to travel overseas, and strange as it is, which is complex from what my future held at the time, I served as a regular infantryman, and also as military police. And it was, like I say, it was a very wonderful experience. But what's so unique about my situation is that my trauma didn't come from a war zone. It actually came about while boot camp, in which a horrible accident took place. And it was the loss of life of a friend when we were going through an infiltration course. And an infiltration course is like having machine gun fire, live machine gun fire shot over your head, which is 2.5 feet high off the ground, where you have to actually crawl through over this course. And in this particular case, that was a misfire or something like a ricochet bullet, which ended up killing a friend of mine. And I just happened to be the one that discovered that situation while going through the course. And of course, that in itself caused a lot of turbulence in my life, going forward.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Okay. Well, sitting next to you, we have Bob. And Bob, can you introduce yourself to us and maybe tell us a bit about the connection here between the two of you?
I am a part of Change of Heart Ministry in Lansing, and part of our mission is to work with people coming out of prison. And our program was contacted to meet with him, meet with Reuben. We picked him up, Frank and I picked him up at Carson City, and transported he and all his artwork and materials to the VOA. And it was a great experience riding with him and listening to his long story in terms of background. I had worked in the Department of Corrections for 28 years. And so inside and training officers, and I experienced a lot of different types of people, but he had the most maturity of anybody I've ever experienced coming out of prison or having gone through that experience. So it was refreshing. I learned a lot more than I may have offered.
I know Reuben calls you a mentor. So do you see yourself as his mentor?
I see myself as one of the people in his experience that I've looked out, as far as I'm concerned, for in his best interest. But I get a lot more back from seeing his art and experiencing some of the things through his eyes. But as far as a mentor, more in a friendship associate kind of person. It's on an equal level. It's not me trying to advise him. It's a God thing, because whatever happens as far as mentoring is his offering to us.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that God orchestrated this relationship, and this is a mutual mentorship.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Reuben, we're here today to talk about some of your artwork, but before we get to your artwork, art has played a significant role in your life, and especially as you have been dealing with post-traumatic stress. Can you talk with our audience a bit about the role of artwork in your life and how this has played into your dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome?
One thing I want to start with is how it all got started. And the program that I was involved with when it got started was the Prison Creative Art Program that's based at the University of Michigan, of course, and in Ann Arbor. And what happened was I came across this particular program when one of the first program that actually started within the Department of Corrections was the workshop, art workshop that I was involved in, which was ironic because it was actually started by Dr. Janie Paul, who's a professor at the University of Michigan, and it was in conjunction with her husband, who was Buzz Alexander, who actually started the Prison Creative Art Program.
Okay.
And of course now it's presently, I think, but I know it's being directed by Ashley Lucas at this time. And so, but during the process of signing up for this art class or getting enrolled with the workshop program, I was like encouraged most of the time that I attended was to try to be a little more expressive about things I feel, things I see, and from Mrs. Paul. But the thing is that I was sort of like on the opposite end of the scale because I was sort of like kept to myself. I very seldom express emotion. I was sort of like isolated. I didn't have what you call a broad field of friends. And so, but she continued to encourage me, and I, of course, continued to try to avoid that part because I had no idea that the reason for the avoidance is because of the PTSD. And so, but eventually I became a little more expressive in my art. I started to do more than just copy pictures because that was the onset of it all. I would take a picture from a magazine or something and copy it. She wasn't satisfied with that idea. So what I started doing was to express a little bit more about my feelings, and because this is part of the trauma is that you sort of like shut down emotionally. And so the more I did it, the better I felt, and the more I was able to gradually start to express more of my emotions, in a sense rehumanize myself. Because it was like I say, it's a very strange position to be in life, where you just go through life and you sort of like go through the motions but having no connections to what you're involved in or the type of things that make up living, you know, or the enjoyment in living, you know. Pretty much was really appreciate the fact that I was able to get in this class and had the tutelage of her encourage me to be a little more expressive.
So it sounds to me like she really helped you dig down into what's going on in your heart.
Exactly.
And she helped that get out to your fingers on canvas.
Exactly. There was, you know, she was able to, I guess, through the process itself, in which, of course, these words, PTSD or therapy, none of this never came into play. It was just something that she felt a need to encourage me to do. And I don't know if that was her teaching style or she just felt that I should be a little more expressive with the level that I was as an artist. And, but Of course, I definitely benefited greatly from it because you fast forward down the road, and the VA, which is the Veteran Administration, came into play and started using art as a therapy program to help people, especially from the Vietnam era in which I was in, to use that to overcome a lot of the trauma that they experienced while serving in the military.
When you were a child, Reuben, did you know that you had this artistic flair in your life?
Actually, I didn't. But I know I favored art because, like most children, this is the first form we got to express ourselves. And so, but what was so unique when I look in hindsight, I was sort of like babysitted in an art studio. In other words, this is a spot that I was taken to where my mother actually worked for a person who had an art studio in the house. So as a baby or a small child, I would play in this room and, of course, see colors and experience color, but had no real conscious connection to it that I'm aware of.
How are you using your artwork now? You said you're using your artwork with the VA. How is your artwork helping you right now in your life?
Well, let me start with the therapeutic part of
Okay.
it. And the therapeutic part is that each Thursday I have what you call an art workshop, which is ran through another organization called Advent House.
And you're running this workshop?
No, I'm not actually running this workshop. I'm participating in it with other veterans who are there dealing with trauma and so forth. And in doing so, you know, I go there every Thursday and I try to like communicate, and we sort of like have like a type of dialogue that sort of like is supportive in a sense and make things work for you. Now, in the process of doing this workshop, I don't particularly do what you call personal art there. What I do there is more like expressive art. And expressive is that mean being able to draw, paint, things that I feel maybe that's troubling me inside. And so, but my personal art, which I do separately and individually, I do it in a sense to try to be more expressive about social issues.
Okay.
Because since being home from incarceration and going through the process of decarceration, I have had so much help and so much service from so many different individuals. I can't help but to try to be of a service to others as well. And the one thing that I feel that I have valuable in my life is art. And so I try to give that as a God-gifted talent to serve the people and to socially connect myself in a positive fashion to society. Well, I wanted to try to give sight to the unseen through my art and a voice to those that are unheard. And the key to all this is that I have to, of course, listen and understand what people go through. And that's one of the things I try to express through in my work.
Reuben, we're going to go to break here. And when we come back from break, we're going to start to look at some of your artwork and have you explain it to us.
Oh, okay.
And with Crossroads Bible Institute, we value artwork. In fact, we're sitting in our studio and you can look around and you see we have all kinds of artwork up in our studio. We value the artwork of our students. And we compile portfolios with their artwork, and we send it to our students so they can appreciate it. And so we're going to talk about your artwork and have you explain it to us. So thank you for joining us, and we'll be back with you in a few moments.
Correcting Bible study lessons is crucial to helping inmates. To partner with CBI in this safe and secure role, please visit us at cbi.fm on the web.
Welcome back to this episode of Crossroad Connection, and today we have with us Reuben and Bob. And Reuben is an amazing artist, and we're going to begin talking about some of your artwork and how your artwork help you express your feelings and express thoughts that were going through your mind. And Reuben, we have a piece of artwork here of a deer in the forest, and that one caught my eye right away because I'm a deer hunter, and I looked at that deer and I said, you know, that's an Iowa deer, because the deer in Iowa are large. What's going on in you as you're painting that picture?
Well, first of all, I have to say that to me, it's a Michigan deer.
Okay.
It's just one of the best Michigan deers, you might say.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that I wanted to. You always hear about hunting, and you always hear about people going out in the woods and so forth. But you never really hear the deer story. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to try to use that as a moment to tell a deer story, that how frustrated he may be just coming up and seeing a person in the woods, but he's in a blind. Of course, this is the indication of the blind with the wood
mm-hmm.
on the side. And I wanted to show an example of a person coming up, a deer coming up to the blind, seeing a person that's in there that's actually went to sleep, and
okay.
which, of course, give the name of the painting called Sleeping in the Blind.
Sleeping in the Blind? Okay.
Right, and that's basically what done happened in regards to this particular hunter. He has been out there so long waiting on this big buck, this big chance to bag him a deer, and this is what the end result is.
Well, I'm going to share a quick story with you about my daughter. A
Okay.
few years ago, I was out hunting with my daughter. She
Mm-hmm.
came back from college,
Mm-hmm.
and we were out hunting, and we hadn't seen any deer yet that year.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, 3 or 4 deer came out of the woods, and they went walking right towards her. And she's an amazing shot. And I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and nothing happens, and the deer walk away. And I walked up to her later, and I said, Maria, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
She says, Dad, I fell asleep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a neat
Mhm.
picture.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Bob, why don't you bring up the picture of the sparrow?
Well, this particular painting itself is one of the very first one that I felt that was kind of more meaningful than others that I had been doing.
Okay.
And because it sort of like, it wasn't hindsight, it was actually done at the time that these events was taking place. And those was during the time that there was so many floods around the country.
Okay.
You had, in Katrina,
Mm-hmm.
and the hurricane. And so, and it was so much, of course, when you're confined, the only outlet that you have to the outside, in my particular case, was through the news station. And so you see all these places where water was rising above houses
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. And of course, everybody was complaining they had to be dislocated and so forth. So who was there to represent the birds or the other animals that was involved in this hurricane catastrophe? And so what I did was tried to show, what if there was a bird that had to abandon their nest with eggs in it, and of course they couldn't take all the eggs out of the nest because which one would you really choose? And so they have to abandon those eggs. And after the storm came about, when the fact is, when the storm has subsided, they came back and found a whole nest of baby birds, which is, they left with the eggs, and now they got these homely birds or babies that they had to feed. And I wanted to try to give an illustration of that so that we as humans can be a little more sensitive.
Okay.
Sensitive to the nature of things, how, we have to all sort of like be connected in some form or fashion. And I think this is one of the things that show that, that life, is sometimes changed by nature, not just in the human life, but also in the animal world as well.
Mm-hmm. And I look at that picture and I see the birds, and I see the mama bird up in the tree coming to give the baby bird some food.
Right.
And it reminds me of words that Jesus says that if God our Father cares for the sparrows, and He cares for the lilies of the field, if He cares for that part of His creation, how much more will He not care for you and me?
Exactly.
So as I look at that picture, that's sort of a little bit of what I take out of it. Here in the midst of this tragedy, this flood, there's care being given, and God takes care of us.
The eggs were actually protected in that sense, because of course, you know, if anybody had to abandon a nest and come back, first thing you would say that, you know, those eggs were gone or you know, damaged in some way. But fortunately, like I say, through the grace of God, she has babies, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's bring up that other picture of the sparrow.
Well, in this particular case, it comes back to the fact of reflecting back where we have to have these moments. Some people may call it prayer, some people may call it meditation, but it's a point where in life where you are able to just sit and reflect back on the good days or days that you felt that life was much better. And in this particular case, it's called sunsetting. And it's when you, especially, there's a certain type of feel you get when you're in the sun. Especially when you, it's almost like it's almost you're having a grace of God shine down on you and sort of like put you in a peace of mind. And that's what I was trying to seek in painting this particular picture, was a peace of mind. And I tried to express it in a way where it could be understood not only by me, but by others as well, and how they could relate to it. And so I used the sparrow.
And I see the colors that you chose. I mean, those are very warm, soothing colors. And yeah, like at the sunset. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to bring up another picture, and this one has a social context to it. And I'd like you to explain that.
Well, this particular situation is dealing with the first time an African American had really won the top honors in gymnastics, and it became significant not just because she had won as an African American, but because of the controversy that surrounded the event after she had won, and because people, instead of praising her for her accomplishment, even as just any person, not just an African American, but any individual or any young lady, she's at 16 years old.
And what's her name again?
Gabby Douglas.
Gabby Douglas, okay.
And she's at 16 years old, and once she won, instead of giving praise to her, much of the talk was about her hair and how it wasn't kept in the sense of the word. And so my point was in doing this painting, not because she was being demoralized, but to show the unity that was emphasized by her teammates after this big ado came about her hair design or hairstyle. Because the very next day in the next event, when the U.S. was presented on stage, they all came out with the same hairstyle to show a sense of camaraderie, which encouraged her to continue and then compete in the events. And that, to me, is most deserving of them as a team and as young ladies who show that sense of unity and support in a strange, well, not so much a strange country, but in a foreign country, and made that event such a wonderful situation. I think they need to be honored, and so I did so in trying to express this in a painting.
Okay.
Right.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
As I look at your artwork, I see that you can paint nature beautifully. You can also paint people beautifully. Your artwork expresses your heart, but it also expresses when you see issues going on in our society that you think need to be addressed.
Exactly. Well, it's like I guess my biggest theme is trying to give a voice to the unheard. And of course, the sight to the unseen. And the only way I could do that, the reason why I say that is because that's the type of position I was in. I was confined. I had no opportunity to be of a service to people in no other way. And so the best way is that because I had this talent and because it was basically, like I say, by grace that I was able to do this. I knew it had to be some type of divine connection in it where I was supposed to be of a service with it as well. And this is the way of me trying to express that.
Well, God has given you an amazing gift, Reuben. And you know, we're sitting here and my name is Art. Okay,
Yeah.
and guess what? I don't have any artistic ability. I am challenged when it comes to stick figures.
Right, right.
But it's amazing to me how God gives you a connection from your heart and your mind to your hands that you can truly express yourself, and how expressing yourself in this way is helped you in many ways spiritually to come alive.
And I think it's one of the more important aspects of me doing art is the fact that it gave me an opportunity to sort of like regenerate a life within me. You know?
Amen.
Because it's not so much that I'm sit down and I mentally create these. These are more or less inspired, you know, from a deeper source. And so in experiencing this, you always have to say, well, if I didn't do it, who did?
Okay.
You see.
Yes.
And so that's where my connection to God began. Because it has to be a higher power, you know, because I know personally that my mind was tainted. And in order to become untainted, I have to do untainted things. And this is one of the methods of me doing that, is through expressing something positive.
Amen. That's awesome. Bob, you've been sitting here and you have you've been part of the conversation at the beginning, but pretty much we've been letting Reuben talk about his artwork. And I guess I would like to close today with you maybe just giving us a few sentences or paragraphs about what you've seen Reuben's artwork do in his life.
I don't know what it's done in his life. I can tell you what it does to other people, to myself.
Yeah.
We run a group on Thursday nights, and there's probably 10 to 15 ex-offenders. But we've shown his art, and he's had a chance to share the insights and the originality of his thinking and of what went into the painting. So they've gained a lot from his experiences through his art. I really can't tell you what his art does for him. All I could do is tell you what his art feels like to me and to others. There's another thing, is that he has a lot of difficulty releasing his paintings because he always has something, a nuance, a refinement that he wants to put in there as an expression of an addition to the story, because his paintings are all stories. And so they're always in process. So to say how it affects him, how he affects his painting, it doesn't end. It always seems to be a recreation. Not a recreation, a recreation.
It's a story that's unfolding.
All the time, absolutely. So that's kind of the exciting thing, is to listen to him express what that painting means, what in his heart is expressed in that, and then to find out if there's anything new.
Okay. Well, Reuben and Bob, thank you. This has been most enjoyable to talk with you and to hear what God is doing through your artwork. And I just want to thank you for letting God use you in your artwork. And I want to encourage you, keep sharing your story, keep painting, and let God use this wonderful gift He has given you.
Well, thank you.
And for all of you who have listened to us today, we thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you again in our next episode of Crossroad Connection.